Hello, my name is Alan Edmonds, and I'm the director of the Brandywine Workshop and Archives. And I'm here at the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts in downtown Philadelphia. Brandywine is very fortunate to have an installation of prints that were collected by the Carolyn and Winston Lowe family and then donated to the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts. I'm here with Paula Morciani, who is the curator and the person responsible for this beautiful installation.
Hello, I'm Paola Morciani. I am the director of the Brodsky Center at the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts here in Philadelphia. Thank you for having me. And I feel very lucky to be here with Alan to discuss the selection of prints that are included in the exhibition Making Community.
The exhibition, Making Community at the Pennsylvania Fine Arts, was so timely because, today, America has elements of being fractured, and the theme of Making Community allowed an exhibition to mount 100 works principally by African Americans, 100 works that were done by 3 major print workshops. The Brandywine Workshop here in Philadelphia, the Brodsky Center at the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts, and Paulson Fontaine out in California. As people view the exhibition, part of what they'll see is this range, the range of imagery. It is one of the most beautiful exhibitions that I have seen, and I do give, for instance, Paulo, the guest curator, a lot of credit for just the way that she mounted the works.
It is about expressing what's going on in the community, how the community is engaging with each other, what are their issues, how they're feeling, that these themes are national and they are themes of a variety of people, of different ages, different cultures, different ethnic backgrounds, because they all represent what's going on in America. And that how people, regardless of their ethnicity or race, are feeling about certain themes that are going on within the country during the time that their work is developed. So I thought it was really powerful to call it Making Community, because that's truly what it represents.
Print shops are looked at in this exhibition, in the context of this exhibition, as important cultural and social forces that really impact how an artistic community can grow by being invited in a print shop to make new works, to experiment with printmaking, to experiment with their own work under the guidance of master printmakers. And a very important model here in Philadelphia that has influenced many more shops, print shops in the United States is Brandywine.
So Paula, my first impression, as I said, about the space and everything, and how it gives it a certain kind of authority and substance, but really, I gotta know, the bold, energetic color that you chose, why this yellow?
Works on paper are always fragile and intimate. I wanted to create a space where works on paper were activated almost as a performative, almost as in a performative space. So I really looked into creating a space that was much more performative from the perspective of the audience. I wanted to create a space where audiences were drawn to look at the works and where the works would come across as very strong presences. I wanted to use it here because this collection of 35 prints from Brandywine really it covers a very large range of perspectives, of generations, of practices. But overall, I think the collection is about energy, is about creativity, experimentation, and the yellow for me sort of conveys that idea of expansion, of again, energy, light, and fluidity.
I think the second thought that comes to mind is in creating the installation, I have my own thoughts on why you put certain groups, certain pieces together. There's a lot of diversity in themes, generations, stylistically, and so forth. And I'm just curious to know, what was your thinking about the placement of certain pieces together in a sense, like, did they speak to each other in some kind of context? Could you explain that?
For example, in the case of the sightline wall for the exhibition, I wanted to have John Biggers and Samela Lewis because they are the sort of looming figures that have influenced all of the other artists. Looking both at the history of African American art in the last 4 decades, as well as the history of printmaking, as well as how much printmaking is about experimentation at Brandywine. So I grouped the artists to convey all of these ideas. At the same time, highlighted in this first gallery of the exhibition, for me, it was important to highlight also sort of aspects that are important at Brandywine of experimentation. And so this wall on the left here is all about 3-dimensional pieces where paper becomes sculptural. So I'm interweaving moments in which works speak culturally, politically, with moments in which artists are engaged with a more formal language, which is the visual language, as a communicative and expressive language. So as we enter also into the show, there are very important moments in which Black abstractionists are highlighted, such as Ed Clark, but also Richard Hunt, and then a younger generation like Odiri Donald Odita.
Paolo, I think a great way to kind of like in this video would be for you to share your favorites and why they're your favorites. It's like a Paolo Morciani tour.
Oh, right. For me, exhibitions are always, curating exhibitions is always a privilege. And I fall in love with every little inch of every artwork all the time. But if I were to choose some favorites, I would say that favorites are often for me also works from which I learn. And the print by Samela Lewis, I think, is incredible in terms of how she used color there. But also you see this boy sitting on a bench reading, and then the background is this wood veneer. But for me, it's an image of how reading nurtures you and you become stronger. And so this pink color of the shirt is really, for me, representing that nurturing, that expansion, and the veneer of the wood is this rippling around the body of this strengthening. And yet it's a very quiet image. It's all an internal kind of work, and that's where the strength is, internally. I mean, unique image. Terry Atkins, who used to teach at the University of Pennsylvania, I had the unique honor of meeting him when I was curator in Houston, and he did one of his installations with modified musical instruments. And since then, I've been following his work very closely. And the print that he did for Brandywine Atkins is, first of all, uniquely colored and uniquely layered. With every print, you have to go close and look at every detail, especially with this one. It's a print that is inspired by going back to ancient Africa, situated in Egypt. But also it's part of a body of work in which he was looking at George Washington Carver, who in 1935, as a scientist but also as an artist, identified and created a new blue hue, the blue oxidation, if I'm not mistaken. But it's again created in 1935, and a hue that the scientists created based on some elements that had been found, some fabrics and some utensils, the Mexican utensils that had been found in the tombstone of Tutankhamun. So he replicated that hue by creating this new color, and the blue that is in this print references that discovery. So Terry is on one side highlighting a chapter in American history that has been buried, never known, and now it is known. But he's also creating this relationship between George Washington Carver and in Europe, Yves Klein, who several decades later also started working with this blue hue, intending it to be a spiritual sort of color, a color that is related to notion of, again, energy, and going beyond what is purely an object, and expanding. Howardina Pindell, the three prints that we have in the show are all fantastic. The Katrina Print, I was living in Houston when Katrina was there. And so I was there when all the people from New Orleans came to Houston. I lived that moment very intensely. She uses in the print this arrow that she has used in her work before. So Howardina Pindell started out as an abstract painter, but then in the 70s, in a way, joined the wave of conscious women who were reflecting the issue of gender and inequality and injustice, and started sort of following the path that Betty Saar had indicated, and looking at self-identity as a woman. So that print of Katrina has both these components, her early components of abstraction that become then represented by this arrow that it's an abstraction but also a conceptual indication. For me, the arrow is representing the hurricane, but it's also representing New Orleans that was hit, and that because it was hit, so much of its history came to the fore, and so much of the injustice that goes along with that history came to the fore because of this natural event. So it's both a work in which she is using, her interest as a pure painter and an interest as, an artist who is wanting to make a work about that cultural and historical moment that happened at that time. What has been very close to, at least in my mind, is Robert Pruitt. I've met Robert when he was just out of school in Houston, and I have followed always his work. In these particular prints that we have here, what you can see is really the crux of his work. His work is about trying to pin down what future means when, from the perspective as an African-American man and artist, what does it mean to speak about the future, to be the new generation, when in fact, you are unsure of how that future, if the future is going to be powerful, and what is, from the perspective as an African-American man, is influencing that future. He, grew up and was very influenced by the Project Row House's fantastic neighborhood revitalization in Houston. So very influenced by a very positive model, very influenced by the civil arts movements and all the artists who participated in it. But coming at a time at the beginning of the 21st century, where is that promise? He's asking, is that promise going to be our true promise? So you see always in his work these figures that bear both a historical, in this case, referencing even the Soviet Soviet realism of figures that are of workers, of soldiers ready to go and work for and to defend the nation. But on the other side, these are young people who are looking out out to the future, but actually it's unclear what that future is. There is always this moment in which that charge is questioned. There is an ambiguity with these monumental figures.
Well, Paula, based upon those comments, it's obvious you developed a very intimate relationship with all the individual pieces and some of the people in this exhibition. I don't know, I hope that our audience that views this documentary will see and be as illuminated as I was. Even I was in the studio when most of it was created. You illuminated so much more for me and gave me even a broader perspective on what this show is about. I just want to thank you for everything that you've done, and thank, of course, this institution, the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts, for hosting it and supporting it, and most especially Winston and Carolyn Lowe for their making the contribution of the work.
Well, thank you, Alan. This has been a great, great honor for me, and never in my wildest dream I would have ever thought that I would have curated a show with these artists and this amazing group of prints. It's been a teamwork with the Lowe's, with you, with PAFA, and it's just been an honor for me to be part of this team and, of course, all these artists.